So hello and welcome once again. Thank you for joining us. My name's Mike Jenkins and I'm joined again today by author Philip Pegler. And we're spending some time reflecting on two chapters from his book, Quiet Courage of the Inner Light. In our previous audio recording, Philip read for us from the chapter World Behind Walls, where he described an experience that he had in his early career as a trainee nurse in Scotland, an experience of caring for long-term patients on a psychiatric ward. And Philip read very nicely for us from that chapter, but also Philip is sharing these two readings from his book at this time in order for us to reflect on the impact and the experience that spiritual practice can have in our lives. And so we're very much enjoying these reflections, and Philip is going to read further from his book, from a chapter that follows on to further describe his own experiences of mental distress and confinement. So Philip.
I'm going to read a chapter entitled Keys to Freedom.
Thank you.
You will never know what freedom really is until it is abruptly taken away with a peremptory disregard for your own views on that vital subject. It's one thing to experience the chafing restrictions of a confinement from an outside perspective as a detached observer. It is quite another to encounter imprisonment from the inside of restrictive walls as, without ceremony, you're robbed of the normal freedom to move around without let or hindrance. That is precisely what I discovered, however, when as a male nurse in Scotland, an unexpected crisis interrupted my plans while training for a meaningful career in the caring professions. The painful impact of losing through unforeseen psychiatric breakdown an opportunity for work that I had long cherished would continue to reverberate in a feeling of disappointment for years, as it irreversibly shaped the course of my life thereafter. One moment, I was a respected member of a nursing team caring for patients in the long-stay ward of a psychiatric hospital. And almost the next point in time, I found myself a luckless patient, locked up along with other sufferers in an acute psychiatric ward and being looked after by nurses, some of whom were also my fellow students. It was a devastating situation, and it brought a sobering realization of just how much had been lost when freedom had suddenly been denied me. It was not the first time I had been admitted to hospital due to psychiatric disturbance, and, unhappily, it would not be the last either, as I continued to be plagued periodically by psychotic symptoms which had first surfaced to blow my mind away after taking psychedelic drugs. In the years that followed, one crisis succeeded another with an almost monotonous regularity to unsettle the ordered routine of family life. And the initiating factor prior to these brief episodes of psychiatric disturbance was virtually always one and the same. It was my insistent participation in various kinds of spiritual practice, either at home or on intensive retreats with other spiritual seekers, that would often precipitate flashbacks to those symptoms of acute anxiety and high energy which were originally produced under the influence of drugs such as marijuana and LSD. At such times, I would totally lose touch with ordinary reality, as my awareness expanded beyond the normal boundaries which delineate our conventional sense of a separate identity. Initially, the experience was usually one of great bliss and elation, but afterwards all sorts of delusions could arise to cause confusion and dysfunctional behavior. I believed I was enlightened, but the world around me did not agree, and with hindsight I can certainly understand why. It always seems sadly ironic that sincere and wholesome interests such as prayer and meditation, which were intended to deliver harmony and peace of mind, should instead be the means of my undoing as far as practical daily life was concerned. But at least it was encouraging to see how quickly I usually recovered from these unstable episodes to resume my normal responsibilities. It suggested that I had no serious personality disorder, and this chimed with my own convictions. Well-meaning offers of help from friends and family in the meantime were never in short supply, but mostly it would be of no avail. Even some well-respected spiritual teachers whom I consulted during this troubled time could only help to some extent with guidance and moral support. Increasingly, I began to realize that no amount of positive input from outside sources would prove effective so long as penetrating insight into the root causes of my problem eluded me. In the end, the course of action to be taken would have to remain up to me. I would have to instigate my own healing. I could not expect anyone else to do what only I could accomplish. Understandably, my hard-pressed wife felt overwhelmed by the continual uncertainty surrounding my periodic instability. At least conventional medicine, with its reliance on the blunt instrument of restraint through medication, was always there as a last resort. But the doctors I saw could offer her little more support than I was being given. They had little time for my spiritual protestations and were distinctly puzzled by my relapses, not to mention my strange pattern of symptoms, which did not fit readily into an established diagnosis. Impatient as they were with my relapses, it soon became all too evident that they had absolutely no constructive suggestions to make regarding a lasting cure. We were on our own as far as my long-term stability was concerned, and for my wife's sake, as well as for my own, I needed to take full responsibility for our next steps on the road to recovery. Mental health issues are still viewed with considerable unease by society at large, but thankfully they no longer carry the crushing stigma that they undoubtedly did when I was young. It's amazing to see, in fact, what a huge shift has occurred in society's attitude to this painful subject, which was almost totally off limits years ago, but which is now, for the most part, viewed with far greater care and compassion, especially too as far more young people are being affected by mental health issues than ever before. As a sense of crisis over the mental health of the younger generation mounts, society is at last beginning to acknowledge that the mind and emotions of all individuals are just as important as their body, and we neglect the proper care of all aspects of overall health at our peril. After all I have gone through with these perplexing issues, it seemed utterly clear to me that the true origin of psychiatric disturbance has not yet been fully understood by the medical profession. And this is because conventional medicine is still largely working within a severely limiting paradigm that does not allow for the complete psychic and spiritual structure of a human being to be thoroughly ascertained. How liberating it is when you permit yourself for once to view psychiatric instability in simple spiritual terms. For example, when you invoke the light from above, it is only logical that dense darkness from within should arise in fury to obscure your inward vision. And when you turn to love, you should not be surprised at all if all that is ignoble and unloving within your unredeemed human nature should clamor selfishly for attention. Profound inquiry into your sacred origins churns the mind. That is its purpose. But when higher energies touch a mind that is not yet fully grounded, the psyche can easily become unbalanced. In psychotherapeutic terms, this simply means that you should be adequately prepared if you propose to delve into the deep unconscious. Any dark subconscious material that has been repressed will then tend to surge up from the depths. And if it does so, you run the risk of being overwhelmed by energies you cannot contain. Now, I'm not for a moment suggesting But this radical approach to mental health issues offers an adequate explanation in all instances, but it does go some way to clarify my own predicament. It may also shed light on the bewildering effects sometimes stemming from the hidden and delicate process of spiritual awakening. Intensive spiritual practice may speed up the process of inner transformation, but it can also complicate it. Full healing of our inward emotional scars proceeds in a subtle manner which is beyond rational understanding and takes its own time to complete. It happened, but the essential clue to the possibility of my own cure was present all along. Right in the midst of these troubling experiences, in the face of continuous upheavals, I always felt that there was nothing truly wrong with me. I returned to this fundamental conviction regarding my essential wholeness of mind repeatedly, and it gave me the heart to press on. I regarded the turbulence in my life as a sign of unfinished business, perhaps even from a previous incarnation. Who can say what is the truth of the matter? Irrational and otherworldly as this metaphysical explanation concerning the reality of karma might have seemed to skeptical onlookers, I still clung to it for all my worth. The difficulties I personally have had to face have made me more tenacious than ever, and at last I can begin to make more sense of that periodic psychiatric instability that has dogged my days. Deep understanding of what factors are involved has finally set me largely free of such troubles. Nowadays, I'm wary of far-fetched notions and prefer to stick to more measured views. I may have finally found the keys to freedom, but I clearly recognize that a responsible exploration of inward liberty is a lifelong task that leaves no room for complacency. And what would my advice be for fellow students of truth who run into similar problems with mental health during their spiritual quest? Everybody is different, and there are no shortcuts or easy answers. You need to remain steadfast when disturbances like this come up and keep an open mind, responding sensibly to offers of assistance from wherever they come. It may be entirely necessary for you to go down the route of conventional psychiatric care, at least for the time being, but there's nothing shameful in that. I would suggest that, in the final analysis, perseverance and trust in the unfailing resources of our deeper self are the most certain keys to unlock the heavy door that bars departure from the dark tunnel of depression. If we never lose hope of finding relief from our troubles, release will certainly come in the end, although not necessarily in the manner we expect. Eventually, we will be out in the bright sunlight again, but what is most important is that we keep faith while waiting, and with our spiritual convictions intact. We must trust, but in the end, all will be well. Then we will find that somehow our problems do resolve, and we are enabled to claim the repose we deserve. This, at any rate, has been my own experience.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you for that reading, that very very open and honest and powerful recollection of that time. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. For me personally, that had brought up a lot of memories of my own time experiencing similar disturbances. But also I think that this can be very helpful for so many people who are experiencing similar disturbances in the spiritual path. As you were saying in the beginning of the introduction to our previous audio clip, spiritual practice can shed the light on so many of those things within us that perhaps have been hidden. And you talk about that so clearly in that section where you reflect upon how opening to light within us can inevitably beckon up the darkness. And that, I think, is something that some people are often unprepared for. I know for myself, beginning spiritual practice, I was unprepared for a lot of that. So I think this can prove very helpful to those people on the spiritual path who perhaps are encountering unexpected disturbances like this.
Fully concur with that. There's immense potential within each individual. Deep in the heart of everybody is this storehouse of power. You know, reality is within. God, however you visualize God, is within you. It's not somewhere outside on the clouds. The power of transformation is there within your own consciousness. Your consciousness contains the keys to freedom, your very consciousness, but it's kind of the way is barred until you gather your all the powers at your disposal, the power of integrity, the power of the conviction that the truth is there for the asking.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. We could talk all day about this topic, I'm sure. One last thing I will say is that what really comes through in your writing, not just of these two chapters, but actually throughout the whole of the book, is a sense of trust in this process, even though, as you say, the road is not always easy and smooth, but a sense of trust and surrender and faith in that process. And that's something that I think can encourage all of us, no matter what path we're on, whether it's an outward spiritual path or whether we're indeed facing turbulent times of our relative human lives. I think it's very helpful to reflect on your own experiences, and thank you for sharing them with us.
Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you.